Hello, and welcome to Story Time with Gwynne, where I will read you a story. Today I will be reading Sir Kevin of Devon in honour of the Devon Castle I recently visited in Slovakia. Sir Kevin of Devon by Adelaide Hole, illustrated by Leonard Weisgard. In days of old and times gone by, when knights were bold and castles high, there lived in the town of East North Devon a little boy whose name was Kevin, a smallish lad, not quite 11. While the other boys were playing ball or trying to scale the old north wall or sailing little paper boats around and round in castle moats, Kevin would sit by the king's great door, watching the knights ride forth to war. "Some day," said Kevin, "I'll be a knight," and his eyes were shiny as candlelight. The townsfolk smiled at what he was saying. The other boys laughed and went on playing. But in Kevin's heart was a secret dreaming of armour and laces and banners streaming, of galloping off with a clink and a rattle to slay a dragon or fight a battle. Then lo! One day, as he sat outside, the castle gate swung open wide. Tot, 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 the royal trumpet carolled, and forth marched Sir Humbert, the king's old herald. "Hear ye!" he shouted, loud and clear. Townsfolk came running from far and near. "Good folk of Devon," Sir Humbert cried, "a monster stalks through our countryside. It isn't a giant, it isn't a dragon, but it's high as a house and as broad as a wagon. It goes with a clash and a crash and a rattle. It smashes our barns, it frightens our cattle. Our bravest knights have fled the land, and disaster stalks on every hand." The townspeople trembled like leaves in a breeze. Then they ran into houses. They climbed into trees. They dived into haystacks and barrels and stables. They hid under benches and fences and tables. Did I say everyone? No, not quite. There stood Kevin with eyes all bright, with shoulders high and uplifted head. "I'll fight this monster," brave Kevin said. His small voice seemed loud as thunder. People peeked out of and over and under. People said "oh" and "ah" and "ooh" as out they peered for a better view. While straight toward the castle marched little Kevin, the bravest lad in the town of Devon, a smallish boy, not quite 11. His footsteps sounded brave but small as he pattered along down the marble hall, and there he stood, quite alone, eyeing the king on his golden throne. With a puzzled smile, the king looked down. "What's this? The bravest man in town?" He started to laugh in sheer surprise. Then he saw the look in Kevin's eyes. "Brave men," thought the king, "are like gifts and surprises. They come in all shapes and they come in all sizes." He sent forth his queen, he sent forth his sages, his silversmith, arrowsmith, swordsmith, and pages. There was a scurrying, hurrying, bustling about. Then clang went the drawbridge, and Kevin swept out. He was dressed in armour all shiny and bright. His helmet was plumed with red and white. He carried a sword and a shield and a mace, but proudest of all was the look on his face. He mounted his steed, he flourished his sword, then he galloped away, while the townsfolk roared. He rode into mountains higher and higher, till he came to a cave near Abbingsfordshire. And there he found the monster. No! Just a little old man with a beard like snow. "Good sir," said Kevin, "I have come from the east. I am seeking a monster. horrible beast. Alas and alack, sir, the old fellow stated, that hideous beast is the thing I created. I'm a harmless old man, and my name, sir, is Amos. I'm sort of inventor, though not really famous. I took some old armor, a lantern or two, a helmet, some lead and some thread and some glue. I put in some wheels and I put in a coil, some rings and some springs and some goose grease and oil. That thing began ranting and panting about. I hid in this cave, and I'm scared to come out. All at once came a crashing and smashing and humming. Look out! Bellowed Amos. The monster is coming! The monster did come, but small Kevin stood fast. He raised up his sword as the creature stormed past. Whack went his sword, whoosh went his mace, but the monster roared on at a furious pace. Halt! Shouted Kevin. I command you to stop! But on went the thing with a clump and a clop. I can't stab it, thought Kevin. It's as hard as a kettle. It won't listen to reason. Its brains are all metal. So I'll just have to chase it through country and town. Sooner or later, it has got to run down. He chased it for days, and he chased it for weeks, through meadows and forests, and valleys and creeks. He chased it up mountains, and then chased it down. He chased it at last into old Devon town. Straight past the castle of Courtly the king, then all of a sudden something went ping! With a boing and a whirr and a few feeble ticks, that monster went down like 10 tons of bricks. Right up on its head leaped brave little Kevin, looking proud as 10 peacocks, or maybe 11. People peeked out of and over and under. Up went a roar like a crashing of thunder. Out came the king in his long royal gown, with his silvery sword and his jewel-studded crown. The monster is dead, sir, said Kevin politely, and oh, he looked fearless and peerless and knightly. The king raised his sword and he touched Kevin's head. I dub you Sir Kevin of Devon, he said. Long live Sir Kevin, the townsfolk cried, the bravest knight in the countryside. And there stood Kevin with eyes all bright. He had dreamed his dream. He'd been ready to fight. He had proven himself worthy of being a knight. The end.